Welcome. I got one viewer on. I am a brand new streamer. Okay. So, anybody joining me, thank you. Appreciate you joining me. Um, feel free to jump in the comments and chat with me. Bear with me. Hopefully, I am here to make this somewhat interesting. So, by all means, jump on. We are here to talk about some subjects of faith, mainly how to be saved. And like the title says, the signs that the end times are here. And the goal is to spread that's actually good news for current believers and soon to be believers. So that's what we're going for. Waiting for some viewers to pop on. Hopefully somebody decides they want to come in and say hi and enjoy the show. I do have some background music. It's called Parakeets, Bubbles and Chuck. And I got my support friend here to hang out with us, and that's Bandit. So please join in the fun. Anybody. I have good reception, so everybody should be able catching this nice and clean. Anybody who wants to join in, has questions, feel free. Jump in and ask questions. As usual, everything goes like, subscribe, share, do all those things that we do here on the internet. I'm hoping from my hashtags we get some followers on here that want to come on and talk about it. I am doing most of my stuff out of Matthew, and primarily the section of Matthew where Jesus is talking about what to look for at the end. So just a Bible study, and I feel like it hits home because of all of the things that are going on in the world today. Sorry, got to get my old man glasses so I can see. And of course, they need to be clean so I can actually see. I am a new streamer, so anybody who is joining in, bear with me. This is not your standard. I'm not a preacher. I am not trained in the ways of getting people to come in and join in the fun. I am not trained in the ways of convincing people to become a Christian. All I'm here to do is talk with people about what I've learned, and hopefully they will join in, and we can have some interesting conversations. That's my goal. That's what I'm hoping for. So I am pop-up disabled. Share. So I'm going to go on my phone. Sorry for the noise, and share this little live stream. So bear with me. New timeout links. Anyway, top messages. I don't have any messages yet, so. Trying to figure out how to share. I know a lot of the people that I do know on social media, not Christian, but hopefully something I have to say will connect. I am sending a whole lot of these little messages out, so hopefully somebody finds me and goes on and is like, hey, dude, I would really like to have people joining in, mainly for the conversation. I do have what I would qualify as valuable insight. So my hope is that some people come in and want to start a chat, want to have a conversation. So our subject matter for today, for those who didn't catch it from the title, is yes, the end is coming. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but I think there's lots of signs out there that says it absolutely is. So we're going to, once we get a few people in here and start the conversation, I will start talking about that. So hopefully I'll get some chatters in here that will want to have a conversation. That's the goal. Just trying to start up that conversation. If you are watching right now, hop in the chat and say hi so I know who you are. I can't really see who's here, so it just shows me like who's viewing current. It just says that there are people viewing. It doesn't actually show me who's viewing. So come on the chat and say hi to me while I'm sending out these notifications. Trying to get people to come on and watch. The main idea is I'm not a preacher by any means. I don't have any training. I'm not. I just read my Bible and pick up whatever I learn from it, and so hopefully that is spread. So that's the goal. Sent out quite a few. Again, any of you who are watching, come on here, join me on the chat. Say hi to me. Aunt Debbie came on. Thank you. Hi back. So our content for today is talking about all of these end time signs. A lot of people think it's hogwash. A lot of people don't. There's a lot of people that are hopping on here for the purpose, or not on here, my live, but that are coming in and hopping on to hopping on the bandwagon. They're talking about it because it gets lots of views. But I think there's a lot of people who don't believe it or are like Jesus warns us of those will come and call to me, Lord, Lord. And he says, I will tell you, I don't know you. And I think that's referencing, I feel like that's referencing the people that claim to be Christian and claim to be of Christ, but don't have any true connection to it. And there's lots of stuff in the Bible about those people and about how to know. The idea is that God knows our heart. So when Jesus tells us to believe with our heart that He came and died on the cross for our sins, it's a thing between you and God. It's not a it's not something that is for the rest of the world. But the rest of the world will see your salvation through your behavior, through the change that's in you. And that's from God. That's a change that God helps you make. So I talked about it on that other social media site where you post videos and stuff. But mainly it was a video talking about how Jesus, once you accept Christ, God changes your heart. And that is evident through your behavior. So not to be confused with the idea of perfection. Jesus also tells us that none are righteous, no, not one, meaning all of us are imperfect. And that is the primary reason God sent His Son to die on the cross for our sins, is so that we can be saved. So that's the idea. But where we're talking about today is Jesus telling about his return and signs of the end of the age. So, and that whole chapter, Matthew 24, and it really goes all the way through to past 25, because he uses parables to talk about it. So if you want some interesting reading, Matthew 24 and 25 really pull all of it together and help explain a lot of it. And contrary to popular belief, Jesus's parables are not that hard to understand. The parables he uses for it are pretty self-explanatory. So the idea is that you get on and you get in there and you read it and you understand for yourself. Because if you look at it, he starts off walking through the temple. As he was walking away with his disciples, when his disciples came up to him and called his attention to the buildings, do you see all these things? He asked, I tell you the truth, not one stone will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. That's his introduction. He's talking about the end of the age. He's telling everybody, hey guys, this is one of the things that's going to happen. And he goes through a long list. He talks about all kinds of things. He talks about wars and rumors of wars. He talks about natural disasters. That whole chapter is just nonstop of what the signs are. So you still don't have any viewers. That is okay. We can go in and keep talking once we got some viewers on here. So I'm just going to read it. And as viewers come on, if anybody wants to join in and talk about it, I'm going to turn slow mode off for comments. So, like I said, I'm just going to start reading, and if anybody wants to jump on and um, comment, they are happy to do so. So, starting at Matthew 24, Jesus says, Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came to him to call attention to its buildings. Do you see all of these things? He asked. I tell you the truth, not one stone will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. As Jesus was sitting on the mount, oh, excellent. Thank you. I'm glad you're staying on. Appreciate it. If you know anybody that would be interested in reading in this reading and talk discussion, share my live so they can come join in. Anyway, Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? And guys, I apologize, but I cannot see the thing in my book, so I'm switching glasses. Who's Milo? I don't know Milo. I don't recognize that name, but that's awesome. I took the slow mode for the chats off so that I can actually see people can message right away, mainly since it's just you guys right now, but I'm hoping other viewers will come on. Anyway, okay, so where I left off. When will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. In other words, don't be scared just because I'm glad to say your Akita's listening. That's awesome. That message is specifically for those who worry about it, who worry about the end. His teaching about the end was not about fear, and that's something that we as Christians need to remember, is that if we're scaring people into becoming Christian, I know it's not intentional. I assume it's not intentional, but that's not the goal. Because people who get scared into it are easily scared out of it or convinced of something pleasant and beautiful and wonderful. It becomes comes to more value to them. So that's one of the things we have to worry about. So when we do all this talking about the end, which really shouldn't be our focus, it's actually, like I said, the end is near, but that's good. It's something for us to celebrate, especially as current Christians. And at the end of this, we'll hopefully have some more viewers and people take the opportunity to become Christians. That's my hope. I'm not a skilled pastor, so or a missionary, so helping people in that way may not come as second nature, but at least spreading the message is good. So anyway, so it's important when we're reading this that we acknowledge or recognize that Jesus is telling us himself. This is not any other books. This is straight from Jesus's mouth, that we should not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All of these things are the beginning of birth pains. So I think when he points that out, they are the beginning of birth pains, then these things are only the warning sign. He specifically tells us that that's how we know he's coming, but it doesn't mean he's here yet. So for those of us who are Christians, we will know that anybody claiming to be the Christ and here to, have us drink poison and jump on the Hale Bopp comet are not of the gospel. So um, you would think that's an easy thing to understand, but I think we're going to see people so desperate to fill that hole and be doing what they want to believe is right, that they may be subject to being led astray. Um, so after that, he says in verse 9, then you will be handed over and to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated. So this is the transition. This is where we're going. We've crossed over into the tribulation. You will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. It's interesting that even though he's talking about handing over, persecuted, and put to death, that the last part of that statement, and you will be hated by all nations because of me, we're already in that stage. Basically, it has become completely unacceptable to be a Christian, even though we are supposed to be the example of Christ and teaching people how to love each other and all of that. If you are paying attention to the people around you, it's actually really easy to see that part is already happening. Now, we haven't reached the stage where they're handing over Christians and having them put to death, at least not in America, but I know there are a few countries over there in the Middle East where that's absolutely the case, that it's illegal to be a Christian and you're at a minimum put in prison. And at some point, you're going to be, sentenced to death for being a Christian. And we'll probably see that in those countries before the end and before the tribulation starts. So the good news of it is coming later, but I'll get to that. So at that time, many will turn away from faith and will betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So that is specifically speaking to one of the end time signs where the gospel being preached to all nations. Another thing that we already see happening, internet is pretty much everywhere. People watch YouTube like it's going out of style. They live on Facebook and TikTok and all of these things, all these other social media outlets. And it's hard to have not heard. Some of them are hearing the word, even though it's coming from false prophets and false teachers. But the intent is there. I chalk that part up as people who mean well, but they themselves have been misled. But either way, it just shows that is actually something that we are seeing happen as we speak. So carrying on, 15. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet of Daniel, and that's referencing, I know a lot of people don't know a lot about this. I'm just trying to reference what I know about it. That's referencing the 70th week of Daniel, which is the 7-year tribulation. So that's one of the things that's going to be done by the Antichrist, and it's going to be done during the 7-year tribulation. I think one of the interpretations that I've heard recently with the things going on now is actually the setup. If it's happening as soon as a lot of us believe it's happening, the the person who is the Antichrist is actually here. He's already making his moves, and I mean, he has to be, um, unless God decides to miraculously create him and put him in place. He's a human. He's a human being. The flesh form of him is a human being, and he is already in the process of planning his takeover. So, um, continuing. Let the reader understand. Then, okay, so spoken of through the prophet Daniel. Let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the roof of his house go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get his cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath, for then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be quelled again. If those days, and this is where we get the good news, folks. Anybody who watches this video later, I hope you are paying attention to this part. Okay, this is the good news, why we're not, one of the main reasons we're not worried. So from those days, if those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, there is Christ, or there he is, do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible. See, I have told you this ahead of time. So he's warning us that all of these things are going to happen. All right? If anyone tells you there he is out in the desert, do not go out. Or here he is in the inner rooms. Do not believe it. For a light that comes from the east is visible even in the west. In other words, if he was the real Christ, we would see and we would know it's the real him. We would not need to go to see him. We would not need that proof. The real him will be visible to everybody. And that goes to teachings on the rapture, which that's not the real focus. Is the warnings that we're going to see things coming, but we're not going to be here for it. So, and that's the good news at the end, is the rapture. So the coming of the Son of Man, and that's part of the teaching in Matthew also, all the way through 25. He's teaching us about these things. So the coming of the Son of Man, wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of earth will mourn. So that is going to be the point where everybody knows. It's no secret. That's why he's telling us to not go to the desert. Do not go to these places where someone is claiming to be the Christ, because you won't need it. On his return, everybody's going to see it and hear it all at the same time. My belief is there's going to be trumpets. I don't know the verse because I'm not a pastor and I don't have them all memorized, but there'll be trumpets and the sky will open and we will see Jesus coming down on the clouds. So that's not a surprise. We get a nice big alert symbol to say, hey guys, it's too late now. It's all over. So I think that's what he's talking about there. Everybody that had not accepted Christ by that time, they will know that they were wrong and that it's too late. Okay, so continuing, they will see the Son of Man coming out. See, I knew the verse was here somewhere. This is a part of verse 30. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call. See, I knew what I was talking about, even if I don't remember the verses. He will send the angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as the twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know the summer is near. Even so, when you see all of these signs, you know that it is near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So this is interesting to me because this is kind of the part where people who don't understand and those people who are claiming there's no pre-tribulation or mid-tribulation, it's all post, or even mid-tribulation doesn't really the idea that close to the end of the tribulation is when everybody gets caught up, that doesn't fit. There has to be, according to Jesus's own words, and you'll see further down in here, that there is a second event. The first event has not been described yet. Right now, he's only describing the second event, because the second event is not a surprise. It's not a magic poof, all of a sudden you're gone. The second event, you get trumpets, you get angels, you get the sky opening up, and you get Jesus coming down on the clouds. Okay? And again, for the other person that just joined in, thank you for joining in. But for those who don't understand that, that is a separate event. It is not going to be a surprise. You can't be surprised. There can't be a wonder of, oh my goodness, what happened? There can't be a long period where, people don't understand. When Jesus shows up for the final time, for the end of it, it is a giant alarm clock saying, hey, if you're hearing this alarm clock, it's too late. All right. Later on in this verse, and you'll or in this chapter, because I'm going to read through the whole chapter, because it's like I said, self-explanatory. You don't hear a lot of input from me, but the idea here is that he's talking about that final coming, that final arrival, and again, it's not a surprise, but there is one that he describes that is definitely a surprise. And I've got to find it. I think I already read through part of it. Did I read part of it? Where two will be working in the field, one will remain and one will be taken. And then two women will be grinding on the hand mill. One will be taken and one will remain. So I'm trying to find that verse because I want to quote it so that people understand and can look at it for themselves, because it's really significant in the fact that it specifically describes the first event, which will be a complete shock to people, and they will come up with excuses and explanations for what happened. And I know it's in this section, but I'm going to have to cheat. So for any new believers who don't know how to study the Bible, it's real easy. If you have a question, look it up on Google, and they will give you verse after verse after verse that explains it. So that's what I'm going to do, because I can't seem to find the verse that I was looking for. Two will be working in the field. Voila, magic. Matthew 24, verse 40 and 41 and 42. So, see how easy that is? I knew I had read it. I knew it was in here anyway. 40, 41, and 42. So, the day and the hour unknown. So, I had just read past it. I knew I did. So, no one knows the day. So, I'll start at 36 so we get the context of it. So, no one knows the day and the hour, not even the angels in heaven, the Son, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what was happening until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a handmill, one will be taken and the other left. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. Okay, so that was the short, quick version. But basically, that is why that description right there is basically the reason that we understand there to be 2 events. So there can't be a situation where 2 are standing there, one stays and one is taken. If there's a great big alarm clock of trumpets and the sky splitting open and Jesus coming down on the clouds, it can't happen. It doesn't exist. For people to be shocked and surprised at the people that have gone missing. So he's specifically describing 2 events, but he also kind of is talking prophecy when he's talking about that we will know it's coming because of the it will be like that in the days of Noah. And as much as I love America, if you just look at America alone, aside from the people who are staying true to faith and trying their darndest to, follow Christ, everybody else, and this is non-judgmental commentary here, but everybody else is living like in the days of Noah, where they were living on just their own personal pleasure. Mike says that verse should mean a lot to men. Take your family to church and teach them about Christ. That is good. That is true. That is what we should, one of the things we should do. And I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, if you go back to the days of Noah in Genesis, I think it was Genesis, it described people in that way, that it was idolatry and adultery and given to all forms. I think it specifically says forms of sexual pleasure. And the whole idea is that was all that anybody cared about. They did anything and anything they wanted to for their own pleasure. And if we look at American society right now, which is a rather significant portion of the Earth's population, that is exactly the description of American culture. So anybody trying to listen to all of these signs and say, oh no, this is just more conspiracy theory stuff and religious dogma and all that, it doesn't take any effort to see this. For them to not see it, it's because they don't want to see it. And they don't want to see it because they want to continue in the lifestyle that they live. And so for some of us, and I refer to on my other social media and this one as baby Christian, because at the different points in your life where you commit, you really become a baby Christian again, because whatever you did before, you were doing wrong. And when you recommit yourself to Christ, you're kind of starting over again, and not because Jesus or God feels that way, but because it feels that way. As a person, you've gone pretty far away and considered other things that don't fit in, what Jesus teaches. And then when you realize that and you bring yourself back, it's like being a new Christian again. So for me, recently recommitting myself to Jesus, it is a lot like that. when it comes to this stuff. And the reason a lot of my content has gone over, all my content really has gone back over to the to Christian content, is just for that reason, because you get excited about it. And when you start getting these feelings that you should say something, and you should speak on certain things and relay a message, that is why on my other social media, I've done the videos about, you know, some of you might have seen in the Come As You Are. And that's exactly what God is asking for. So he doesn't ask us for anything else, just to believe in him and have faith. So I want to make sure that all of my content stays with that. And it's in some ways caused a serious level of excitement for me, even if you can't see it on my old gray, wrinkly face. That's my goal. So my hope is that I can do this, do lives, and just do live streaming and talk about these things, and hopefully somehow something I says, because like I said, I'm not a preacher, and I'm not skilled in bringing people to Christ myself. I can spread the message. I know what the Bible says: confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, so that we all might be saved. It's so simple, the concept. Understanding the why may be harder for other people. You have to get into, how God set a standard rules. Some call it a covenant, the first covenant, where you had to behave. Everything was acts. You had to sacrifice. You had to be good. And when you weren't good, you had to make up for it through some version of sacrifice. But after a while, he realized that he came to the point where we can't do that. He knows as humans we can't do that, which was all part of his plan from the beginning, which is why he sent his son. He sent his son knowing that we can't do it, so he sent him as a sacrifice so that we might be saved. Okay, so what we do as Christians a lot of times is we fall back into those same things that Jesus was trying to teach us not to do. He was trying to teach the Pharisees not to do. The Jewish leaders, what they didn't understand is that they were missing the point of the old rituals and the old covenant. Now, like Mike, what you said about take your family to church. Church is an awesome thing. If you find the right one that speaks to you, go for it. But we also need to remember that church is not an organization. It's not a building. There may be somebody trained there that is more educated in the Bible, and it's a good place to learn. But primarily, the church was your family. It was not an organization. It was a group of people. Jesus says, anytime two or more gather in my name, I'm with you. That was the beginning of the church, was people gathering together. And so if you don't know enough, if you feel like you're uneducated and you're worried about, giving the wrong message to your family, then definitely find a good place that will teach you the right way. But it's not a requirement. Don't misunderstand that. It's not a requirement to go and be a part of a physical church building church. Anytime you get together, you can get together with your neighbor. If you're just taking the time to study the word and try to understand what Jesus was teaching us, you have accomplished what you just talked about having your family at church. The idea is the teaching and the learning, but too many, not all, and I'm not judging on all churches, but too many churches in the sense that we all understand it nowadays, as in, a specific church that practices a specific denomination, even the ones that claim to be non-denominational. There's so much corruption throughout churches. Some of us, like one of the reasons I fell away, because I thought you had to be in church, but all of them seemed bad. They're all just guys, getting rich as a pastor. and wearing the fancy clothes and the fancy cars, and giving the wrong impression about what the church is there for. Um, and that's not me judging. I get it that, for those pastors, that's their job and they need to get paid for their job too. But at the time, my mindset was um, affected by a lot of things. So it led to feeling like the organization of church, where people were teaching things that were basically the church leadership's own set of rules, um, and not really getting the message to their church members that they should have been. Um, Mike says, I prayed with my wife for the first time the other day. It was enlightening. We read scripture together every night while I'm 1,000 miles away. Just for something to do with your wife, that's perfect. And don't get me wrong, Mike, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to church. Some people are getting exactly what they need by just going to a church. That's great. I just give the warning that there are so many corrupted churches. Be careful in what church you choose and become a member of. Just, you know, um, it's so easy for corruption to get in, and unfortunately, the side effects of that is the people in the church being corrupted by the teacher. That's all I was saying. If you guys as a family want to go to a church, then go to a church. There may be something great in that church. Um, and but if you're worried about the fact that you aren't going to a church and that somehow changes your status, it does not. Um, it's just about church. Really is, like Aunt Debbie said there, we are the church, not the building. It's any gathering of people in the name of Christ. That's what being in a church is. So if the building you go to has a group of people that are really good Christians and they're doing what they should be doing and they're bringing you in and making you part of their family as you are making them part of yours, then you're in the right place. Just the warning is just a kind, friendly warning. Like I said, one of the reasons I kind of fell away was some bad experiences with churches. That it just, I quit going and quit wanting to be at church, where I used to love being at church. But I also went to church for the wrong reason. Anytime you're going just because mom said to go, or anytime you're going just because you want to be able to hang out with the kids at the youth group, or a couple of friends that you have that go to church, you as the individual are there for the wrong reasons. And I know for most of my life, even though it's not anything negative on my mom, for most of my life, I was there for the wrong reasons. Mom was making me go because it was the right thing for a parent to do under the circumstances. But I was willingly going and participating more for the appearance, more for the impression that I gave off to have friends and, do things that were fun and cool and stuff like that. So yeah. But like what you said, just taking the time to pray with your wife and read the Bible. It's kind of I know it sounds weird, but it's a fun activity just to get on, one of your social media apps, or just a video chat, see each other's face and listen to each other's voice and spend time with each other. And what better way to do it than, being in God's word, right? That's my take on it. So, hopefully, like I said, I really appreciate you two coming on and hanging out with me. This is my first time doing a YouTube live. I have really crappy success with um, the other the other live streaming that I've been doing, because their content is more for, hey, you have to be selling something, and you don't get any viewers unless you are selling something. So when I'd be trying to sell, they'd get mad at me for talking about Christian stuff when I wasn't talking about my cologne product that I had in the product placement. I didn't talk about it enough. They wanted me to spend more time talking about that than what I was there to talk about. And so when I had a product that I was supposed to be promoting, I would get a lot more viewers, even if they weren't on the whole time. But I was getting flagged and reported by the system for not promoting a product. So, and that was really disappointing. We are all capable of sinning. This is where God's grace and mercy comes in. Absolutely. And one of my favorite verses is, again, I'm horrible at quoting, but for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. I don't know why. That one has always stuck out to me, and it's a reminder that we're not perfect. What's interesting, though, is things that I used to do just because, and it was like, oh, it's no big deal. When I start to want to do it, the first thing I start thinking of is this a Christian thing to do? And should I be doing it? Now, it doesn't mean if I go through with it and do it that I'm going to hell for doing it, but it's amazing how when you do commit yourself to Christ that you start to not want to do those things. You start to question when you get to go to do something that you're in a bad habit, for lack of a better way to put it. If you're into a bad habit of doing it, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I kind of feel guilty that I'm wanting to do it or that I'm going to do it. That's even for the church building organization. They will sin and fall short, just like me. That's true. And that's why when I made that comment, I made sure and updated that I'm not saying people shouldn't go to a church. By all means, if you find the right church, go to the church. If going to that church ends up being a distraction from your own faith, then it's the wrong church. That's all I was saying, is that it's not about being in a building. It's about being with the people that are in the building. One of the things I noticed is that church is the one place that you can go where, with the exception of certain individuals that might happen to be there, the people that are there as a group are so welcoming. It's your first time showing up, and it's hi and how are you and what's your name and tell me about you. They're interested, they want to get to know you, and they're super friendly. It's one of the most accepting places that I've ever been. Not correcting you, just clarifying. Oh, I know. It just gives me subject matter, gives me stuff to talk about, and my birds really like hearing me talk. So but yeah, it's amazing that it's always, when you're talking about the sins or the downfalls of a certain church, if you really look close at what it is, it's usually something to do with individuals in the church. It's not the group as a whole, because one of the best ways to know what kind of church you're going to is go to a new church, a brand new church that you've never been to, and see how accepting they are. And most of them, when you're not distracted by the negative individuals, a huge majority, like there's so many people there that are welcoming you and have a smile for you and want you to be there, that you don't even notice the bad ones. It's when you run into I hate to say bad ones, but the ones that are having an effect on you and that are being a distraction, that comes later. And that usually is really a good reflection on how you are as a Christian, how strong you are as a Christian. It's good to have somebody around you that reminds you that, hey, not everybody at the church is a bad egg, but you will run into bad eggs. That's one of the things about it, is that you will run into bad eggs. So you just got to remember that. And Sorry, I'm updating my stuff because it's, like I said, I'm a new streamer and I'm not a pro like all the youngsters that get on and do this stuff. So, um, but yeah, hopefully you guys got something out of my message. I'm hoping that later I can start to get more people. I don't know who the third person is that's watching. I haven't gotten any. I haven't gotten any uh, chats from them. So, but that's okay. It's not a requirement to sit on and listen to me to chat with me. But whoever that other person is, if they could send a chat and say hello, I appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us and joining in the conversation. So, again, I'm going to try to do this regularly. I'd like to do it, you know, at least once a week. Um, Sunday's always the best to do it, but you do have a lot of people that are already going to their own church and not wanting to come and listen to more sermons after. So, um, I hope so. Thank you, Aunt Debbie. I appreciate that. Thanks, Mike, for coming in and hanging out with us too. I appreciate it. Again, I'm hoping to get more followers and more viewers as I continue and get this thing to grow some. But as a new family in Christ, I need a positive place with positive people to help introduce him to my wife and kids. It's important to believe for us to understand the character of Jesus. You know what? That is an awesome statement. And one of the best things that I ever did for myself when it came to understanding Jesus, the character of Jesus, is reading the Gospels. When I was in Iraq, I kid you not, I read the whole New Testament like 4 times, but I read through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John um, way more times than that. And I just focused on, I really focused, I didn't read the whole thing each time I read it, but I focused on the things that Jesus was teaching. And like that's where I came to the realization before what I said before, that the parables are not near as difficult to understand as I used to think. They're actually pretty well straightforward. It's very rare that any of them are a little bit confusing, which that's the beauty of the internet is it really doesn't take much when you're doing your own self-study. And that's kind of an important thing is self-study because it's not always possible to have an interaction with another person to help you study. Use the internet. Google is an awesome thing. And most of the time, when you read through the things that you find, a lot of the times, the ones that are not on target, you can tell. After you've read through it a little bit, it's like that really doesn't make sense. That doesn't match up with what I do know. Besides that, go ahead and finish reading whatever that is or watching that video. There's a lot of good videos out there that will kind of help guide you in what you're doing. But go through a few of them, And what my best practice is to look up. I try to write down, especially on YouTube. They usually put the verses that they use in the information. I try to write down what verses they talked about and go back and actually look them up and kind of balance what I actually read and how I naturally understand what's read with what they were trying to say. One of the reasons I stepped away from doing videos I have been told that too, that John is one of the best places to start. Um, I'm not 100% on why that one is advised to be the start. I did it the hard way. I just started at Matthew and read, and then I went on to Mark and read, and I went on to Luke and read, and I read John, and then, I read it a couple more times in the same order. My favorite so far is Matthew. I just feel like there's so much in Matthew that is Jesus's teachings, but it doesn't mean there's not amazing value in his teachings that are in the other books either. But yes, I've been told that a number of times, and I do like reading John. So there's not, that's not a bad place to start. Like I said, I started from the beginning in Matthew and read all the way through, and I read all the way through, which is how I kind of rediscovered Revelations, which has always been one of my favorite books in the Bible. And coincidentally, as much as people like to use Revelations and any of the prophecies as a scare tactic into, hey, you know, believe in me because the end is going to be really bad and I'm going to save you from it. That's never been the case. I've just always been fascinated by Revelations, and I've been kind of excited by the end times concept. Because I do, from my own study, my own understanding of it is that we're not going to be here. That's not from a pastor teaching me. I have listened to a few preachers on YouTube and stuff like that. I have listened to them, but most of it I get just from my own reading. So I'm doing my own bits of research. So that's my advice: is just do that. Is just do whatever you want to do. Do any kind of reading you want. You'll find things that fascinate you. Recently, stuff just speaks to me. It's stuff that makes sense. Like I found in 2 Timothy, I think it's chapter 3. It covers, well, why don't I just look it up while we're all having a conversation on here? One of the disadvantages to YouTube versus that other one that I like to use that you guys know I am on is because you can have people have conversations in the live stream. You have what they call people in the box. It's way easier than doing everything through chat. But it's also in some ways difficult when you get people who want to argue and debate because they all talk over each other. So yeah, on the end times stuff, one of my favorites is 2 Timothy, because recently I hadn't been through it in a long time, but I knew there was stuff about it. 2 Timothy chapter 3. I talked about this in a TikTok that I was doing. So chapter 3. But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited. There's a whole long list. And if you read that list, that is I think and Debbie, we were talking about this on the earlier portion when it was just you and me. If you read that list, it spells out exactly what is going on, primarily in the United States. Some teachers say that the United States is most likely the Babylon referred to for the end times conversations. And again, that's not meant to be scary. It's meant to be kind of exciting, is to see that, these things, even though it's such an extremely different thing from where we used to be, especially when we were growing up, to where it is now, where everything is acceptable and people can do whatever they want. And it's all about, your own personal pleasure, which is that is exciting to see that it's actually that the prophecies that are in the Bible are real. It speaks way more to the end coming in my book than wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes and famine and natural disasters. Those have been happening. And yes, I still feel that all of those are happening at higher frequency, but that particular passage speaks way more to me than those others. So I got to catch up on my chat section here. Recommendation on a version of translation of the Bible for someone who got lost in trying to read King James. So there, any study Bible, there's lots of really good study Bibles out there, especially that they use what are they called? They'll give you explanations of translation, and they'll give you the King James version and another version. There's also study books that you can get. I've always liked the NIV, but there's the NAS, and it's a New American Standard is my newest Bible, and I like that one. So really, most of them are good. It's really, if they're using the King James to balance in your study Bible, then I'm not real familiar with the New King James. I think they just slightly changed the language, so it's not so much of thee and thou and thy. That's what always threw me off, is the Old English language that they were using. But I wouldn't advise going. There's the NLT, which is the New Living. Then there's the New International and the New American Standard. So study Bibles that are in the New American Standard and the NIV, the New International, I think are the best, but that's all opinion. That's all opinion. Just research it on the internet. You'll get a lot of opinions and a lot of people saying, no, you have to only read the King James because everything else you lose stuff in translation. That's not really all that entirely true. English is English, and most translations are trying to get you the best that they can. But I would advise a study Bible because they give you a lot of extras to help you really kind of follow what you're reading. That's my advice. So, did anybody figure out who the third person was on as a viewer? They never came on and said hello. If we get a third person on here viewing, you are more than welcome to hop on in the chat and say hi. Just so I know who all we're talking to. Yeah. My old one was an NIV student Bible, but a newer one was the NAS, New American Standard Study Bible. And I like that one. So that's my advice. That's what you should really check out. But yeah, I mean, just review them, look into reviews on them and stuff like that, because if you get the study Bibles, you can, if you have questions and you want to make sure that what you're reading from the Bible that you choose to go with is correct, it's not going to be far from correct. It's really a translation issue where, it's like using the word thou shalt not kill versus thou shalt not commit murder. The more accurate translation is, because the original, the oldest version, the best version is the Hebrew, which is what the Old Testament was translated from, and then Greek for most of the New Testament. When it says thou shalt not kill, it's actually incorrect, because the actual word used in the Hebrew, the way I was told, I didn't read this one for myself, but this is what I was told, is thou shalt not commit murder. There's actually a different word for murder versus just versus unjust killing. But that's what you lose. And in most cases, those differences are not detrimental to faith. All of those versions are intended. There's some really off the wall ones that, watch some YouTube videos. What Bible versions should I stay away from? Because there's some that take so much away from the Bible and add so much weird stuff in that it's not. I wouldn't even look into it because they are just way off base. They're just way off base. So that's what I would advise. But you can look into any of those things. Any one of them is good. I do not recommend The Message. I'm assuming that's one of those translations. I'm going to look it up on my phone so you guys can bear with me. Best and worst versions of the Bible. Best and worst versions of the Bible to read. Oh, no, that's cool. I'm just happy to see an additional person on here. So no, that's awesome. As long as they're watching and they got something out of what I had to say, I'm super psyched. Worst translations of the Bible. So the 5 ones that are listed here is the Mirror Bible. Then the Passion Translation, TPT is what it's commonly referred to as, is a stay away. And the New World Translation in the 50s, the Tract Society, project by the Jehovah's Witnesses. What you find is that so for people to be able to publish their own version of the Bible, there has to be a certain percentage of changes in the transcript. So the more changes, the more they get to claim a copyright and be able to get more money off of it. And so I know that was one of the controversies with that Jehovah Witness version that I just told you about. Those are just the top 3 to stay away from the New World Translation. But the best ones, of course, a lot of people like Baptists specifically. If it's not King James, then it's not. Don't read it. So they say that according to this, and this is the Bible Project, the most accurate translations is the New American Standard Bible and the New King James Version. Yeah, again, I don't know much about The Message, but I don't necessarily disagree with you. Anything that has so much change to it that it, that just brings into question validity in my book. So, according to the Bible Project, it does say that the NIV, NLT, NASB, ESV, and NET. Those are the different letter translations. Yeah, that's I would stay away from those four that we just talked about, and I would look at something like NIV, the or New International Version, New American Standard Bible, um, and then I think Aunt Debbie said one too that was good. Oh yeah, and the New King James, which is another one listed here. The New King James is just a more modernized version of the King James. It might be easier to read if you're used to the King James Bible. That's the only difference, is they're just intended to be easier to read and understand. So, all right, guys. Well, I have had lots of fun. This was a fun experiment, and I plan on continuing to do it. I will send out invites anytime I come on here again, and I plan on making myself do it very, very regularly. I'm going to find different subjects to speak on and do some reading from the Bible. Um, this one was just fun to do because I like it so much. Um, I like the end times stuff, but like I said, I see the end times as good news, not bad. Um, and I don't use it to scare people away. I use it to get people excited about how we're starting to actually see biblical prophecy come true. So it's exciting to me. So thank you, Mike and Aunt Debbie and Ashley, if you're still on and can still hear. It was awesome having you guys on, and I hope to see you and many more next time. So like, share, follow, subscribe, do all those cool things that we do on these social media things. And I will speak with you all again very, very soon. Thank you.